Shalom, shalom. First, I want to start off by giving all honor, praises, and infinite glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors unto the elders, apostles, and bishops of GMS Great Millstone who rule well, teach, and edify. And peace and blessings to you, sincere Akim, Wa'akwat, in the house of the faith. My name is Ishaya, and I don't want Ratazah. Gonna make an edifying video. Going into, these devils are setting up the framework for persecution. They're seeking to get rid of your constitutional rights. They're seeking to get rid of the Bible, man. They're anybody that speaks against this NWO and the B system, and ultimately what these devils are doing in their councils, they're going to be put, they're going to be put into subjection. Okay, and that's the thing, man. This is the disposition of the truth. You have to not bow. We have to continue to stand strongly for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and that's when our hope it will be fulfilled. In the very moment where your death may be closest to you is, at the same moment where you may find, your life. And, it's only going to get worse from here. It's only going to get more intense. The Spirit's only going to, it's only going to be a bigger clampdown on everybody from this point on. But this is Daniel 7 and verse 25. And he says, he shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And this is Esau Edom, man. These are these devils. And it says, and most were at the saints of the Most High to think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of times. So they're changing everything. They've completely switched up everything, and they're wearing out the saints of the Most High. Because why? Because they know, who they are. They know that they're ultimately going to be going after the seed. This is a Revelation, chapter 12 and verse 17, and it says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman. That woman is Israel. That dragon ultimately is Esau Edom. And it says to make war with the remnant of her seed. And that word seed, going into it, I was watching the elder Yashawamba's live streaming, and he was going in on this topic, man, and it was real edifying. And it's what, am I blind? The remnant of seed. So it goes into the word sperma. It says right here, it says a residue or fuse reserved as the germ of the next generation. So the direct offspring of the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what they're really seeking to go after. That's who they're seeking to crush. Because ultimately their whole plot and plan with this NWO, with the B system, to have that total control, is they're trying to elongate their kingdom. They're trying to elongate their time here in Babylon the Great. They're trying to, rule forever, because they understand that they're not, chosen by the Lord. They understand all of those things. That's why they're sitting there seeking after all these other gods and all the other things. And Isaiah 47, the scriptures talk about, like prognosticators and astrologers fail thee. They're doing anything that they possibly can in every way that they possibly can to try to elongate their time. This is Job chapter 14 and verse 2, and this correlates because, their system being brought out, this truth going out, and ultimately the elect being gathered is going to be the biggest brick wall in front of that plan. They're not going to be able to fulfill that plan because they're not going to be able to take over the children of Israel. They're not going to be able to get over on the elect. Okay, but this is Job 14. And we'll do verse 5. It says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed bounds that he cannot pass. And that's pursuing the Esau Edom. He has a set amount of time that he cannot go about, man. And this devil understands that, but he's so proud that he thinks that he can, disannul the Bible. He thinks that he can, get over on the Lord, and ultimately rule forever. He thinks he's the Most High, essentially, man. And you got these devils ultimately releasing a lot of, laws and decrees and foundations being raised up, to help with the shutting up of the word. This is, you got the Florida House Bill 945, which ultimately gives state government the device to be able to classify who is a terrorist. And you also got another thing going out, about the federal government, talking about adversary intelligence entities. And let's just look up the simple definition. What is an adversary? Okay, so what is an adversary intelligence entity? And it says is a broad term used for a person, group, or organization or government that gathers and uses intelligence against another party. So basically those that are in opposition towards, whatever the other party is. And these devils are making that, and implementing that into the system, man. They're releasing these bills in certain foundations. They're literally in talks about how they're gonna take that they're gonna centralize AI data control in certain bounds into the federal government, so that the state is not able to, talk against, those points. That there's gonna be no justified uproar for states on an individual level to basically say, no, you cannot, do that with AI here, or no, you cannot put that many AI, data centers here. You cannot do this, that, and there. It's getting to the point that they're releasing these laws. They're going to pass them, bro, because this is ultimately the furthering of the system. This is the furthering of Esau, Edom, trying to work up that beast system, man. And it's only a matter of time before, all these things come to fruition. We're getting closer and closer, man. This is Daniel chapter 8 and verse 25. And the elder went into this as well. And it was real heavy that he went into this. And it says, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And if you go into that word technology, technologia, it's a Latinized Greek term. And I don't think I'm going to get it, but it's a Latinized Greek term that goes into the systematic treatment of an art, craft, or technique. So ultimately, his craft, his technology, his technologia, his craft, shall prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. And we understand that even through the Spirit in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, Ezekiel chapter 28. We understand this devil has a disposition to be like the Most High. He wants to be the Most High, okay? And through his technology, he thinks he's going to be able to get that. See, that's the thing about this RFID microSIA, man. When you take that thing, they're going to completely tech hack and hijack your whole brain. That's the closest thing that they'll be able to have to attaining a man's spirit. That they're going to try to tech hack a body. These devils are trying to find any way, shape, or form that they can get that total control. And that's why it's significant that they're releasing these things. Major companies like what Elon Musk is doing, and Palantir, how they're gonna have that, ultimately that foundation for total control, because Palantir is going to get so far to the place that they're going to be able to track where you go, what you're most likely to do. Your digital footprint is going to be all over the place. And they're setting up the laws to where if you speak against those things or you refuse those things, then they're ultimately going to slap you with that draconian law. They're going to put a hit on your head, man. I don't know if you bros seen that movie Star Wars, man, how the Empire, you have the rebellion fighting against the Empire, and how the Empire, ultimately had that total rule over the whole universe. Rebellion's still trying to fight against it and, keep certain places and shit like that. This devil's doing that. But ultimately, we going to be doing that in the kingdom. And it's going to be under righteousness, man. It's going to be total control. It's going to be Yahweh Shai's empire, man. From planet to planet, it's going to be that constant standard of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai all over. And that's what this devil's trying to do here on earth. He's trying to set up that total control. And anybody who's rebellious, he's ultimately going to off him. He's going to have that draconian law, the disposition of, if they don't get along, just kill them, and that's going to be our hour of temptation. Are you going to submit to the system? Or are you going to submit to Esau, Edom? Or are you going to die behind the truth? And that's the thing, man. We have to be valiant for this truth. The scriptures talk about how Israel is not valiant for the truth, man. We in this time where everything is going to fall apart very soon, when everything looks so normal. Like, I'm over here just chilling in a parking lot. I see a Waymo car, a self-driving car, man. That's nuts to think about. Going back to John on the island of Patmos, the vision that he's seen in Revelation, talking about these things and the things of the future. We're in that time right fucking now. You got self-driving cars, You got the airplanes. You know, he even spoke about those airplanes, man. You know, second woe past, third woe cometh quickly. We understand our salvation is going to come from that nuclear fallout, you know, in that third world war, man. And the tensions are rising. You know, you got Trump, Neuro 47 out here, you know, going to all these different summits, you know, imposing that Babylonian will upon anybody that he possibly can. And you have the rest of these countries starting to hate him. That's why you got France that pulled their gold out of the United States and put it back in their home. That's why you got Europe pulling away from them. You could really tell about how much these countries trust Babylon the Great based on their economic moves towards Babylon the Great, because Babylon is a money hub. Babylon is like, you know, going back into Tyre. Tyre was a money hub. You had an old Tyre, new Tyre, and new Tyre was you know, very profitable, man. And they moved all kinds of things. They controlled the canals and the waterways. That was a giant money hub. So if you were a nation roundabout and you was good with them, you know, you move your goods through and through the canal and this and that. You trade with them and become easier. You know, Babylon the Great, man. You know, they control a lot. You know, they have a lot of oil here. They have a lot of resources here, and a whole lot of money here. So when you see a nation that's really pulling away from Babylon the Great economically, you have to ask why would a nation possibly do that? Because there's a lack of trust. You know, that there's a lack of trust in Babylon and its plans, man. These nations are ultimately all going to turn against Babylon the Great, and it's going to be for the destruction of this devil. But finishing off Daniel 8:25, it says, through his policy, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken without hand. You know, so he shall destroy many, and by peace shall destroy many, man. This devil has a disposition to get everybody chipped. He has a disposition to get, you know, everyone has to get that MOTB. Okay? And this leads me to the precept of Proverbs chapter 21:5. Just real quick. You know, in the NLT, it says, hold on, is it 21:5? Hold up. I'm gonna have to search it up for a second. Bear with me. Oh, 21:15. Salakia. This is Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 15. It says, justice is a joy to the godly, but it terrifies evildoers. And these devils understand that Yahweh Shai is coming back. These devils understand that the Lord is coming back to redeem his people, the remnant of his people, the elect. Okay? And it terrifies them, man. And that's ultimately justice, because look at all the things that they've done to us in his captivity. The scriptures say that they have furthered the affliction. You know, these devils have taken that, ultimately the Lord used these devils as a sword, but these devils have took it to a whole new level, man. And these devils exalted themselves against the Lord, man, against Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. So they're terrified in everything. Why do you think that they're going so fast? You know, that Revelation 12:12 spirit. And that reads, it says, therefore rejoice ye heavens, ye that dwell in them, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devils come out down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And that short time is now, man. That short time is now. This truth is gone out, you know, all through the four corners of the earth. You know, the name Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, you know, ultimately, you know, it is known, man. You know, and it's only a matter of time for we waiting for that next, you know, false flag event, you know, a major event, you know, something on a scale of worse than, you know, 9/11 back in September 11th, you know, so that these devils could really start putting that judgment, you know, towards the men of the Lord. Because the scriptures say in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 9, 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 9, it says, for I think that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai had set forth us, the apostles, last, as it were appointed to death, for we were made a spectacle upon the world and to the Gentiles to men. So, you know, the Lord's going to send the apostles last, man. And also, even during these times of judgment, you'd have the lewd men, you would have, the murderers, the thieves. They all get that judgment and that persecution. And very lastly, you would have the persecution of the apostles, man. Having to be thrown in a cell with a nigga like John Jones, okay? And we're seeing that now, man. It's only a matter of time before, they start putting all these laws and legislations into effect of, who is deemed a domestic terrorist, who is deemed a threat to the federal government, who is deemed a threat to the NWO system. In the midst of war, tensions are high, economies are crashing. It's only a matter of time before these people start breaking out. We understand that spirits of vengeance are going to be released upon this place. Niggas are already going nuts. You got dudes throwing their babies into the zoo. Zoo inhabitants, or I kind of forget what the hell they call them, but they throwing their baby in a lion's den and shit. You got people stabbing each other, cutting each other up. All kinds of things, and these are all signs that the end has come. We also see signs in the world, man. By the earth, the sea, the way that the earth is mourning right now. That's a sign in and of itself that we're, almost out of here, Akim. But, yeah, man, these devils are really, setting up that framework to disannul the Constitution and take away rights. That's going to cause a lot of uproars, and they're going to use that order ab chao to further this NWO system. Our hour of temptation is nigh. I pray this lesson was edifying. I want to lastly give all honor, praises, and infinite glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Kakwadah, Shalom.